Low Country Lunatic Podcast. Here we are again. This is episode 14. And again, we have a very special guest on the show, Mr. Francisco Gonzalez, the author of, oh, you can't see it because of my background. The American Dream is a Terrible Thing to Waste, Volume 1. And apparently, I just found out there's a Volume 2. But Francisco is here. He's given up his time. He's going to put some energy into this today, and we are so grateful to have you on the show, Francisco. Man, what is up?
Hey, Joe. Well, first of all, it was great to meet you in person a few weeks ago, and it was, yeah, I'm just really grateful to be on your show. Really excited.
Thank you, man. Thank you. So, and you've been a busy boy, huh? You've been all over the place,
Yeah, I'm always busy, So,
traveling, doing a lot of traveling.
yeah. So, one of the things I do, as we'll get into, is I have a company called Fearless Journeys, and one aspect of that company is we have group trips, and we actually did a group trip to Charleston. So when I met you, I was speaking at the Charleston meeting on a Thursday evening, and I decided when I got that speaking invitation, why not build a group trip around it? Because Charleston's one of my favorite cities in the country, and yeah, so we had a group come, and they were able to come to the Charleston meeting, but then also they went to we explored Charleston all weekend, had a lot of great time, good food, and really talked about what we're talking about today, the American dream.
So, what stood out to you when you were here this trip around?
I've been to Charleston on a couple visits before, but this was the first time, believe it or not, that I was able to visit Fort Sumter. And
Okay.
so, as people may know, this is where the first shots of the Civil War were fired. Um, it's a small little place, right? It's a very small fort, little tiny island. Took us about a 45-minute ferry ride to get there on a very slow moving ferry. I'm sure you could jet over there on a speedboat in 10 minutes or something, but maybe less. But it was great. But look, it's a solemn place. Obviously, the Civil War was a
Hmm.
was a horrible thing. Um, but we were there on Saturday, September 13th, and we were actually the first people to be at the fort for the day. It was the first ferry ride over, which means we got to participate in them, putting the flag up.
Mm.
And there's a really, really interesting history there, right? Because when the first shots were fired of the Civil War, the Union flag came down. The United States flag came down, and they put the rebel flag up. And but then 4 years, I think, to the day, in from April 1861 to April 1865, the flag went back up, and that was the flag we put up. It had, I forget how many stars, but it wasn't all 50 because there wasn't 50 states then. But on this particular day we were there, when they put the flag up, they actually lowered it to half staff because we were there in the couple of days after my friend Charlie Kirk was murdered, and the president had ordered the flag to be put at half staff. So it was striking to us. We had a conversation as a group afterwards that here we are at a place that started the Civil War, and 700,000 people would go on to die in that Civil War.
Mm.
And here we were, another time in history after a political assassination, political violence. And we hope that, there isn't further violence, and that the country can heal. And in the time since then, we've seen there hasn't been any violence, any kind of retaliatory efforts because of Charlie's death. In fact, there's been candlelight vigils. There's been people going back to church. There's been baptisms. There's been memorials. So it's been, I don't know. I hope we move in that direction in terms of the response to something like this. But anyway, look, being there in Charleston has so much history, both pre-Revolutionary War history,
Yeah.
Civil War history, amazing, cool architecture, and awesome food, and really great like historic district. So it's just a quintessential all American city.
It really is. Yeah, the culture down here, it thrives, and it's so diverse, and I think uh the general population, when you think Charleston in the South, they don't think it's diverse, right? I mean, probably, the conception. But that is powerful, like to be there at this time and during this like national tragedy, really. I don't care what side of the fence you're on, it's a tragedy, and you have a personal connection to Charlie. So, how has this really affected you? Like, if you get down deep, the emotion alone has to be probably more profound for you than it would somebody that didn't know him on a personal level.
Yeah, I was friends with him for 13 years. So first of all, anytime a friend of yours passes away, right, and it's sad. Um, the fact the way he was killed, the fact that we saw it on video, and I had to watch that. Just like many, I clicked the link the day that I heard he was shot, and I didn't know he had passed yet. And as soon as I saw it, I mean, I just broke down crying. It was emotional, because there's your friend, and then in addition to that, he's become this very, very public figure over the time that I've known him. And so, it's kind of one of these weird things when you know somebody personally that's also become a big public figure. You know them both personally, and you also know them from afar because you see them every day on Instagram reels and you see them on TV and podcasts. I mean, Charlie Kirk literally was everywhere. Like, I would go places and I would see him everywhere, like unexpectedly, even in the first 4 or 5 years I knew him. And then I would pull. Probably not a day goes by when that I would before his passing, that I'd see him on online, on some Instagram reel, on some podcast, maybe at a rally or something, and you just see him everywhere. I mean, he literally was omnipresent. So the fact that my friend is not here, and the fact that this larger than life public figure is not here, it's very sad. The first couple of days were super traumatic and devastating. And it was crazy because I learned the news, and then I'm literally, as I'm packing for Charleston, which I had to get on the plane the next day to go to Charleston, and so and trying to unpack what was happening. In some ways, being in Charleston and running a group trip, which, by the way, I wasn't just going there; I had to like literally lead a group of people,
Yeah.
and in some ways it served to be a distraction from the reality, but in some ways it was tough to make it a distraction. um, so it was very. Now I also I was at the memorial in Phoenix, in Glendale, Arizona,
Yeah, right. You were telling me.
which happened, what was that, almost 2 weeks after his passing.
Hmm.
And so that was amazing. I look, the flip side of this is to see that while we've seen some really crazy lunatics post some horrible things online about Charlie, and celebrating his death and things like that, you've seen some of that, but that's been minimized because of the powerful response we've seen to the positive response to Charlie and his message. And
Amen. Yeah.
I think he would be blown away by what we've seen. I mean, I'm still stunned by. I mean, I'm seeing people over the world. Like, they put up a mural in Serbia, in Belgrade, where
Wow.
I was just in Serbia earlier this year for the first time. Charlie was a big basketball player, and apparently when he was in high school, he played with a team of all Serbian Americans, and they gave him a cute Serbian nickname, Charles Kirkovic or something like that.
Yeah.
And anyway, but so they put this mural of him in Belgrade, Serbia. It's like this giant mural on a wall, where he's in his, like, Illinois, whatever it was, team basketball jersey with the little Serbian emblem on it, just like he was. And they put a nice little video out about it. But that was just one example to me of how his legacy is proliferating around the world. Already in Florida, there's one county here in Florida, Lake County, that just yesterday, that as we're talking, like a week ago, the county commission approved that this one road in their county would be called Charlie Kirk Memorial Highway. Um,
Wow.
and they already put the sign up yesterday. Like, the sign's up. You could go look at
Wow.
first place in the country to do that. So I'm getting people reaching out to me. There are colleges and universities that want to do some different memorials. We have a couple here in Florida that are going to be doing something in his honor. Turning Point is growing like crazy. His organization, they've they've gotten a heck of a lot of more donors, but they've also gotten over 100,000. I lost track of how many people called Turning Point within the first 2 weeks to say a high school or college student either wanted to start a chapter or join a chapter. I know people that work for Turning Point that are on the phone calling all those people. They have a team of over 80 people right now making calls. And one of my friends who works there told me the first day he made almost 200 calls
Wow.
in one day. Most of them were voicemails, but he also got some people on the phone. And he said he was just one person times another 80 that were doing this. So they're very overwhelmed, but I think in a good way. People are
Yeah.
tuning in. And so, look, I think this shows you that, first of all, Charlie was an entrepreneurial machine. This guy just continued to grow things. So when we're talking about these entrepreneurial lessons, there he embodies like all of them. But he also just had such a positive impact. He transitioned the organization from his simply about politics to also about faith and culture.
Yeah.
And
I
I
love
think that's
that.
what's really impacting a lot of people more than anything. And it's hard, anyway, he was just a larger than life person. 31 years old. It's a tragedy, leaving behind two small children and a wife. It looks like his wife Erica is super strong and is going to lead the organization that he founded. And so it's amazing. But so anyway, he leaves a great legacy behind, and I think that the biggest thing is, it's now in our responsibility to carry on his
Yeah.
legacy.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And something you're mentioning about Serbia and all these countries that like starting to like commemorate his life, and his message and all that. And something you talk about in the book is the impact of migration and the reason behind the migration to the United States. And so Charlie, like you said, embodied entrepreneurialism and the American dream essentially. And now the American dream, because of his passing, you know, is even more prominent in these other parts of the world that, I didn't see that happening as a result. You know what I mean? So like
It's
like
interesting because I travel a lot. I run a company where I do group trips, but I've also just been a lifelong traveler. I've now been to 37 countries, and
wow.
yeah, and some of them I've been to multiple times. I've lived in Guatemala for a year, and I go back to Guatemala a lot. But one thing I will tell you, first of all, I love traveling because I love seeing the world. It gives everybody a different perspective. That's, I think, one of the traits of entrepreneurs. Like they're people that gain different types of experiences, including travel, and they gain lots of perspectives. Then they have context to put things together better as entrepreneurs, or as just as building the entrepreneurial mind. And as much as I love traveling and seeing all these amazing places and spending time in them, the one thing that I always, that my travel always confirms is that the United States is for sure the best place in the world. I believe it's the best place in the history of the world. And we have the best economy. And even though there's challenges in our economy, there's a reason people are trying to get in the door, constantly. I mean, we have more opportunities here than anywhere else. I like to say, and I said it in my book, really like what we almost have to, when we're trying to build the entrepreneur mindset, we should almost think about the immigrant mindset, right? Immigrants
Hmm.
walk into this country and they see opportunities everywhere, while maybe people born and raised here, we think opportunities are drying up. We think things are getting more expensive and challenging. And some of those things might be correct, but when you compare them to the rest of the world, we still have infinite opportunities here. We have the most technology, which means we're ahead of the game. Like I know people like in a lot of countries I visit, and they're like, they know everything comes out first in the United States, right? Well, why is that, right? We have such a great environment, our rule of law, our separation of powers, our constitution. It creates this economic engine for innovators to flourish, and that then gives all of us like the tools to be able to take that technology and do a podcast wherever the heck we're doing, right? Do whatever we want to do.
Right. So like if you took somebody with the entrepreneurial mindset that you describe in your book, there's 11 points, right? If you took a person that has all those things and put them in, I don't know, Madagascar, right? How do you think it would compare to being here in America? Like, I think people need to wrap their head around how good we have it here. Like, somebody with all those skills, they're going to find it a lot more challenging over in, a third world country. Can
Yeah,
it be
look,
done? Can it be successful though?
oh, well, look. I do think, no matter what your challenges, whatever your environment is, if you can build an entrepreneur mindset, I think you improve your chances for success. Would I rather be in the United States or Madagascar? Well, that's pretty obvious. I definitely would like to be, and this is why people come here. I mean, look, I spent a lot of time in Guatemala. It's a beautiful country, amazing people, people of very good values, people that are the most hospitable people in the world that I've come across, and also a land of abundant natural resources. Like, it's just got so many great agricultural resources. Obviously, like the best coffee in the world, I think, as well. Uh, but like half the people in that country live in poverty, right? Like
Mm,
the top 10% are doing very well, right? They're doing as good or better than you and I. The next 20, 30% are doing pretty good. They're doing pretty good. But it's that bottom 50% that is just in so much poverty, um, that they are the ones that leave the country and migrate. And they have to take a long journey, usually through Mexico to the US border. Sometimes they get a chance and fly here, but the lines for visas are very, very long and very, very difficult to get. So, yeah, why are those people leaving? Well, I mean, look, it's just the economic situation there for a lot of people is just, um, very challenging. We have something in this country that in the United States that, I would say very few countries have, and that is this ability to be upwardly mobile, to move from one, as the old rags to riches, right? Like the old idea of rags to riches. And in a place like Guatemala, that is so rare. If you're not born into a certain class of people, it's hard to move up.
right,
And so, it's getting a little better maybe in a place like that, but it's still so much difficult. You hear stories, but they're very rare. Here, that's like almost common. That's the common story. Almost every millionaire or billionaire was not a millionaire. They did not be born as a millionaire or billionaire. They made it themselves in this country.
right. Now, do you think it comes down to systems that create the stability?
Yeah, well, look, I think the systems, yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, the fact that our Constitution protects our individual liberties, the separation of powers,
Hmm.
meaning power is checked against itself, right? So this, and then also we have also 50 experiments, which is also interesting, right? We have 50 different states with different laws, different levels of taxation and regulation. So people have the ability to move, right? Maybe you have the ability to move for different jobs, different kind of jobs that maybe jobs dried up in the Midwest. So I'm going to go to California, or I'm going to go to Chicago, I'm going to go to Florida, Texas, whatever. Taxes are too high in New York. Well, I'm going to go to South Carolina or Florida, right? So you get the ability. We have the freedom to move to different types of environments as well. But that also shows you that our system gives people more freedom to innovate, freedom to do what they want with their lives. And it's not just about the fact that we have a big country and lots of natural resources. I mean, that helps. But Venezuela is a decently sized country and has a lots of natural resources. Brazil is about the same size as the United States land wise if you take out Alaska. Um, and yeah, about half the people there live in poverty, even though it has a very strong economy otherwise. Um, but what's the difference here? The difference is, as much as we want to complain about our politicians being corrupt, as much as we want to complain about maybe police being corrupt, or like whatever your complaint is, it ain't anywhere near the level of corruption that is allowed to go on in so many other countries. you know so I think that the rule of law here is so much stronger, and that's why we need to protect it from a public policy perspective. But I would also say, even if we're getting overtaxed or overregulated or whatever, entrepreneurs will find a way. Like, look, the
That's right.
tariffs, right? Like, we could have agreements or disagreements about the tariffs, but at the end of the day, like, the tariffs added another level of challenge to businesses, right? But what do they look at all these entrepreneurs? Look what they're doing. Look how they're finding a way around it, right? Okay, we're going to do this then, and we're going to do this then, right? You just find a way. Now, would it be nicer if the government just got out of the way? No tariffs, no taxes, no regulations. Sure, that would be the ideal world. But the fact of the matter is, we're gonna, as with an entrepreneur mindset, you're gonna navigate around whatever obstacles that you see and just find a way, in an ethical way. You're gonna do it whatever way you can do possible.
Right, and something interesting that you said. I don't know if it's in the book or it might be both the book and that speech you gave at that event. You said something about the Constitution protecting our right for property. Can you like explain that? What are you talking about when it comes to property? Why did the Constitution mention that?
Well, that's very important because this is also what separates us from a lot of countries. Like we have the ability to own private property, and we have the right to our property. So that right is to our personhood, our personal property. Who we our bodies and everything. But it's also the right to our physical land, anything we own, our cars, our houses. So if somebody if somebody does damage to your property, let's just say it's flat damage, vandalism, well, that's they don't have a right to do that. Which is why we have laws that would then hold them accountable and put them in jail, right?
Hmm.
Because first of all, that's just like personally disruptive civilly, but it's also disruptive to like your livelihood. And so, by the way, I teach some economics classes in some prisons, by the way, and one of the things when I'm teaching economics, we go over this, and I'm not shy to tell the guys, hey, reason we have, like, let's just say, like, if you were just allowed to steal from a 7-Eleven, right? People do it, right? And well, the owner of that 7-Eleven, they how can they possibly like have a successful business if the person stealing is not held accountable? So
Right.
when somebody steals, it's because and it could be like a poor person or somebody in need at the moment, but you just can't allow that because it would just be so disruptive to that business. The business would cease to exist, and it would just be chaos. And so you have to have accountability for those people's actions in order to tell other people, hey, if you steal, you're going to go to jail, and blah blah. You could take this example 100 different ways. Um, and so we can't have this. First of all, it's not right morally, but secondly, economically, it wouldn't be prosperous. So you do start seeing this in some places where people kind of just we just let people get away with things, or we have these I'm very much, especially, I mean, I do teach in prisons from time to time, so I'm very much into rehabilitation and giving people second chances, but it can go a little too far when you say, well, we got to decriminalize this,
Hmm.
we can't lock people up forever, and things like that. And well, yeah, but you do have to strike a balance of helping these people understand, and not just them, but anybody else that hasn't committed a crime yet, like, understand the accountability. But the fact that our Constitution protects private property rights, that's so important, because then it gives businesses and entrepreneurs the confidence to know that this is protected, and it could be everything. This is why, like, we could have debates about whether there should be copyright laws and how long somebody should own a copyright of something and all that stuff. But the fact of the matter is that also developed out of this intellectual property idea, that when
Right.
you innovate, when you invent something, when you create something and you go get a patent for it, you own that for a certain amount of time, that nobody else can do it because it was your idea. You came up with it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Something I wanted to ask you too is like you're talking about morals and our rights as citizens and stuff like that, and the stuff that the government uh, put in place to protect our rights. Right. Where does faith fall into this for you? Like, where does the faith element, and the protection of our right to, um, freedom of religion, I think, is one of the amendments. So like,
Well, it's all in
can
the
you talk?
First Amendment, right? So the First Amendment, you not just have free speech, but the first thing you have is the right to practice any kind of religion that you would like. So you have religious liberty. That's very special to the United States as well. Um, and um, and so, what does that do? That's just the government giving us the freedom of religion. Now, if you look at the context of where that came from, that's because there was a period where religion and state were very tied up. And actually, when you looked at the colonies of the United States, every colony, a lot of the states had like a state religion, or maybe like for example, like Maryland was the only place like Catholics could be safe, right? So Maryland became sort of like a Catholic colony, right? And then different states had different churches that were tied to them, so they were coming together as a union. They were like, hey, we need to have religious liberty. And like the Quakers were in Pennsylvania, right? So and some of the religions might have been a little more like dogmatic and trying to say, well, this is all people could be in this place. This is also coming out of like the Church of England, and kind of separating that from there, and all that sorts of things. So, but the biggest thing is you give people the the freedom to practice how they do now. But the other element is that's just what the government protects. The other element is the culture. And
Hmm.
if you do look at the United States, we were founded as a Judeo-Christian culture. our founders were very, very specific about that. In fact, I just learned recently, and I was reading it a few weeks ago. I don't subscribe to his Bible, but Thomas Jefferson created his own Bible. Okay.
Really?
You could
Huh.
actually Google it. It's on Amazon. You could download it for 99 cents or whatever it is. But it's not that long. But basically what he did is he took out what you would call, I guess he took out the miracles. He took out
Okay.
what you would call the superficial, or the not the superficial, the things that
Supernatural?
the supernatural. Yeah, thank you. The supernatural types of things, because he said, okay, people might not believe that Jesus walked on water, or that Jesus turned water into wine, or whatever. So he takes out all that, but he leaves everything else in. He leaves in all the teachings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he basically then writes what he believes. Tom, and by the way, I'm using Thomas Jefferson as an example because some people would say he was one of the least religious of the founders, in terms of he didn't subscribe to an organized religion. And
Mm.
some would say he's a deist, and some people might even say, "Oh, deist just means you just kind of believe that there's something, but you're not very specific about a god or whatever. You just kind of believe in some kind of supernatural." Well, here he was actually saying, I came up with this Bible because he studied a lot of different religions and a lot of different philosophies, and he said this is the truest one, Christianity. Like what Jesus is teaching is like the truest thing that we could follow. John Adams said, basically, he talked about the Constitution that we have, the system of government we have. Um, it is only good for a religious people, right? Like,
Mm.
and the reason he says that is because it gives you so much freedom, that if freedom without morals could be really, really bad, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just about, it's like, this freedom that becomes just like whatever the heck you want to do. You have to use your freedom, and then you have to have responsibility, and the responsibility is really built on this faith culture. But I would also say I would internalize that a little bit more, and say that first of all, especially if you're a Christian, right? Jesus talked to your heart. He said it's okay, like in Judaism, which is the religion he sprang out of. God gave us all these laws, right? But then the laws were getting like too like legalistic, and they were, you
Mm-hmm.
can't move your right foot on Tuesdays with that, whatever, it's like, right, you're just getting all these
Yeah.
like 600 different things you can or can't do on different times of days and things like that. But this was, in the beginning, God's way of instilling discipline in human beings. We are all fallen creatures. We are sinful people. Naturally, we're bad. Naturally, we're bad people. Like, it is just our way. We have to. I mean, if you think about a little kid, right? Kids are little beasts. I mean, right? I mean, if they just did whatever the hell they want and they weren't taught things, they would just be savages, right? And you look at
Right.
what's the
Fly. Lord of
novel
the Flies?
Lord of the
Lord of the Flies.
Flies, right? It would be
Yeah.
Lord of the Flies. That's Lord of the Flies is
Brilliant. Mm-hmm.
youth without morals, right? And without any kind of structure in society. Um, so you have to teach young people to know right from wrong, to be good, right? I mean, you could also teach them bad things, right? Like I think racism is really only taught when people are taught racism. I mean, kids aren't naturally racist, right?
Right.
Um, but other than that, they need to be taught. You can't hit somebody and have no accountability, right? You can't take someone else's food. I mean, kids do this. They do this all the
That's
time.
right.
And
Yeah.
that's why you have to sit them in the corner and discipline them and whatever. We have to get back to a culture that actually imposes some discipline. But what I'm getting at is, in the faith culture, like Judaism, right? I mean, it's really the early days was God instilling this discipline. And then when Jesus comes along, Jesus says, "Okay, you guys got too tied up with all the laws. What you
Right.
need to change is your heart, right?"
Art. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and your heart is what really is what you are. But anyway, if you move forward, entrepreneurs, I really see like entrepreneurs are people of faith. Now, they may or may not be people of religious faith, but I would say there's a big element. Many of them are, and I think the people who are of religious faith can take an easier leap, if you will, a leap of faith in their entrepreneurial idea. But I would say that all entrepreneurs, regardless of their religious background or any kind of religious belief, they are people who literally take a leap of faith because they see something where other people don't, and a lot of times people think they're crazy. that's a crazy idea. Where are you going to come up with the money or the time, or who's going to buy that, or like nobody needs that. But they're like, no, I think there's a need, or I'm going to build a need. I'm going to find a need. Like Steve Jobs, like, one day stood up and said everybody's going to need this phone, or going to want. Like, everybody wants to buy this phone. Nobody knew what a smartphone was until he told you how it was going to change your life, and it did. I know we could say good or bad, but it did change your life. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah, we probably wouldn't be doing a podcast from two different remote locations if it wasn't for people like, Steve Jobs and others that were able to create this type of technology that allows us to do this from almost anywhere. And then it just continues to build upon itself. Then, the cool thing with the Steve Jobs iPhone example is it's crazy to think the iPhone was only just the first version, which was very low compared to now, just came out in 2007. Like that wasn't that long ago, right?
No.
And then what was created because of the iPhone? The App Store. And if you think about, there are millions of apps now on the Apple Store, and then millions of different apps on the Google Play Store, and every one of those apps represents a company. So think about all the entrepreneurs that started. All they had to do was come up with one app that was successful to actually have a whole successful company. And just this one piece of device, and enabled millions of apps to be created, and then from there a lot of other things were created. So it's really interesting, the innovation. But going back to the leap of faith, I mean, Steve Jobs saw something that most other people, almost nobody else saw, and he gave us that vision, and he was a heck of a salesman as well.
You know, and you kind of answered a question I was going to ask, which was, do you need to have faith to be a successful entrepreneur? And then uh, on the flip side, others need to have faith in you in order for you to be successful. So faith is necessary either way.
Yeah, that's a good point. They do, but sometimes you have to, build that faith in them, right? But you're right. I mean, sometimes you need people to have faith in you, like let's say an investor, right, or
Right.
even just a customer, right?
Yep.
Um, and but look, that faith is they're only gonna have that faith if what you're selling them is something that you basically convince them they need. So you're gonna have to, maybe it's also like based on maybe who you are, like your character, and maybe the things you've done before, the kind of knowledge you have about the whatever you're selling. So yeah, you're kind of like, yeah, you're basically selling them to have faith in you. But I think it does start with the individual entrepreneur, that has their own faith and believes it so much that
Right.
they're bringing along converts, I guess you could say, right?
Right, yeah, and so how does faith? You mentioned innovation and technology being a big contributor to our economy and to the success of a business. Like at this point in the game, it's necessary. It's completely required to have some kind of knowledge in technology that could help fuel this thing forward. And there's this debate, like AI not being, God friendly, and right? So, like, where does faith and Christianity and the technology of AI kind of intertwine?
Well, I think it's just really important that anything anything can be twisted in different ways, right? So you can use the internet for good, or you can use the internet for bad, right? AI, the same thing. I think you got to be careful. I think the biggest question with all of this technology, including AI, is to make sure that we're not losing our humanity.
Hmm.
Um, and so, like, one is like the machines are taking over, right? Okay, but where does that leave the human being? I think at this point, the human being that knows, that has the best knowledge about the technology, and this technology being AI right now, learn how to use it, develop the skills. Don't just use Chat GPT as a search engine. You could just go to Google for that. If you want to use that Chat GPT as if it's your assistant, and you need to train your assistant to, maybe like in your own to look for things, write things in your own voice, um, to do things faster for you that you weren't, that you were able to do. So just I would say it's really to use it to make yourself better, but you still have to learn a lot of things yourself and have your own knowledge. The AI is just going to get you there faster.
Right, like it's an assistant. And
Hmm.
something I just thought of too is like, nothing happens in God's world by mistake. I'm sure you've heard that, right? So it's like we wouldn't even have AI as an option if God wasn't in there somewhere, right?
Yeah, maybe. Although you could turn that around and say, the devil's always looking to get at things too, right? So I think you got to be careful. For example, like everything can be used. There's a lot of great uses of social media, right? We're more connected. We can find more information. I can keep in touch with friends from high school or college on Facebook, whereas maybe we would have lost touch if we didn't have
Yeah.
something kind of pulling us together. But at the same time, you can just be glued to your phone all day on just thinking
So,
social
right.
media is reality. Every tragedy in the world can heartbreak you at every moment of the day. You could be nefarious with it. You can find bad people to do bad things with. So it could be a rabbit hole to go down in a negative way. But I think the best thing is to say, okay, first of all, turn it off before you even think about anything, and say like, okay, what do I want to accomplish, and how are these tools going to help me accomplish it? But I also have to put maybe even some restrictions on myself. Maybe it is. By the way, these phones and these companies, they've responded a little bit to some things. I mean, they're still trying to addict you to them. Don't get me wrong. All right, they want your eyeballs on them because that's how they make money. But at the same time, they've built in tools to help you restrain yourself. So, for example, we're on a podcast here. I put my phone over here in do not disturb because I don't want to be distracted. Or if I'm in a meeting, right, any kind of meeting, I would put this in do not disturb. Or if I just don't want, maybe, if I go to the gym and I see people glued to they work out and then they just go to their phone. They work, nobody's like looking at each other. I use my phone to listen to music when I'm at the gym. Okay. But sometimes I put my phone in do not disturb because it's really annoying when I'm listening to a song and I'm lifting some weights and all of a sudden someone's
An
calling
ad.
me or someone's
Yeah.
texting me, right? And it's like it's really disruptive to the little mind flow you're in with your workout or whatever. So sometimes it's just good to make sure, hey, put this away and use it during certain times. That way you can focus on what you actually need to accomplish in real life,
Right.
and use your phone for good communication and follow up. And maybe it's also about, hey, you know what? I'm gonna take email off my phone so I'm not distracted. I'll only do email when I'm on my computer, which is, by the way, what I do. I don't have email on my phone, which can make it frustrating for some people. But I took it off my phone like a year or two ago because, first of all, I don't think I'm actually. I get so many emails that if I looked at every one coming on my phone, I'm not even gonna like be effective in responding to them the right way. I'm much more effective with my email when I'm on the computer, and I know these are the hours where I'll look at my email on the computer, and here's when I'll check in. And then you don't have to live in a world of being reactionary to everything. You want to live in a world where you're the one that's proactive, and you don't have to react to every little text or email coming in at any given moment. Even though we do kind of feel like we live in this world where we have to be available, or what if there's an emergency and someone needs to contact us? But half of my life I lived without any kind of cell phone, and people always found a way to get a hold of you if there was some emergency, right? Or God forbid it was like 10 minutes or an hour that you had to find out something. So yeah, and honestly, going, the news traveled super fast around the world when Charlie Kirk died and he was shot, and because somebody texted me a link and I opened it and I didn't know what I was opening, I saw something horrible that I didn't want to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I think that anyway, if you can use technology to your benefit, that's the most important thing, and make it just put some guardrails on where you should just make sure you kind of stop um, it just sucking the life out of you.
Right. And so what you're talking about here is discipline, essentially. And that's biblical. because we're undisciplined people. I think you said at the beginning of the show. And
Yeah.
that's something I admire. Listening to you talk, I could tell you're disciplined, and your time management skills are on point because you're thinking and considering all these things like, how do I stay in the moment and how do I not be distracted? And that has to contribute to your success as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, like you said, I have a podcast called Agents of Innovation where I interview other entrepreneurs, and that's what inspired me to do something entrepreneurial. But when I listened to so many of them, and that's what I wrote, tried to capture in these books, like what are some of the things they have in common?
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they're very disciplined for the most part, very disciplined people with very good time management skills. Um, they're very intentional. That's one of the characteristics I have. They're just very intentional about everything they do, including their time. Um, Going back to Charlie Kirk's example, I mean, this guy was so. Think about, first of all, I'm never going to meet somebody again in the rest of my life. I'm just going to say this, like I'm 100% confident because that had so many skill sets within one person. Like I know people that are just as good as Charlie at this or this or this, but they didn't do the 100 different things he did. I mean, he just did an infinitely number of things so well. And he, as busy as he was, if I texted him, 9 out of 10 times I got a response within the hour, maybe even within minutes, sometimes not. But you know what Charlie was intentional about? One day a week, he took a Sabbath from all digital. So he, from Friday night to all day Saturday, he was a Christian, but he took a Jewish Sabbath on technology from Friday night through Saturday night. And and you think about, here's a guy who has the president of the United States trying to reach him sometimes. He has governors and senators and digital media people. I mean, he's got 500 people on his staff, attorney. I mean, just think about all the different kinds of people that are trying to reach him. And he says, nope, one day a week is for me and my family, right? That's it.
That's incredible. Yeah, and I think we should all adapt something like, you know what I mean? Like, I want to do it. Like, that just inspired me. I didn't know that about him, and that blows my mind.
Well, the one thing I say, well, I learned that about 4 years ago. I heard him say that on a stage about 4 years ago, and I texted him the next day. I said, "Hey, I heard you say this. Is this true?" He's like, "Yeah." And by the way, over the years, I tested this out. I mean, it was actually by accident. It wasn't testing him, but there would be times I would text him on a Saturday, and he would never respond. Oftentimes, it wasn't even delivered because his phone was off. So I just stopped texting him on Saturday. Now think about that.
Mm.
If you think about the number of people trying to reach Charlie Kirk on a Saturday, right? And now you might think at the beginning he's probably got a backlog of people when he opens that phone up Saturday night, Sunday, right?
Yeah.
But you got people like me trained to know he's not responding on Saturday, so why even bother sending that text? So I would stop texting him on Saturdays. So therefore, you're probably slowing up the rest of the world to your pace. They know you're not
Mm.
responding, so they're going to, over time, learn he's not going to respond on Saturdays, so why am I even trying him? So anyway, so I think it's an interesting thing. But yeah, I think that there's different things like that a lot of entrepreneurs are so intentional about. Sometimes every minute of their day, down to some people can get it down to a science. It's difficult in the types of things. Sometimes we have to do different kinds of tasks that don't allow that much flexibility. But if you could carve out time for certain things, maybe you say, hey, you know what? Like I've talked to some musicians, and I've asked them. Like there was one musician I've had on my podcast, and his name's JD Eicher, and we had him on one of our Fearless Journeys live coaching sessions. And I said, hey, I want you to talk about how you balance your creative time with really like being efficient, with your time.
Hmm.
And he said, well, like for example, I know like on a particular Tuesday, I'm just gonna, because I said songwriting, how do you know how long a song's gonna take you to write? You have no idea. Sometimes a song will come to a musician like when they're not even trying to write a song, and they'll just write it in like 2 minutes. Sometimes they're in a studio for hours and hours and hours for days, and they can't figure out how to write the song that's they want to write. So how do you plan for that kind of time? And he said, well, you know what? You just do it in time blocks. You say on this particular Tuesday, I'm going to spend 3 hours songwriting. And I might write a song in 5 minutes, and I might never even finish the song in the 3 hours. But at 3 hours, I'm done, and then I'm moving on to something else. But at least you gave yourself that creative space, so you knew even if I failed, that was the space I knew that I was going to had the time I was going to have to, like, be creative and just try to. And you could, somebody who's not a musician can do that when you're just trying to come up with, maybe like brainstorming things, or just writing a business plan, or like whatever. Like, you could just create those things, or maybe just learning something. Maybe you're like, oh, maybe you're trying to learn a new language. Okay, we'll put certain amount of time, a certain amount of days, or you're trying to learn. I've done this sometimes where I'm like, oh, let me teach myself how to learn a technical skill, like
Hmm.
using a YouTube. Just I'm gonna spend Thursday at 2 o'clock for 2 hours, going on YouTube and watching videos about whatever. So I think anyway, it's all about being intentional with your time. And I think that's how a lot of people are successful. So yeah, I just try to apply what I've just observed from other people. And I think over time, you just get more consistent at doing it. The more you do it, it just kind of it just kind of evolves that way.
Right, and we're all students of life, and so it's like, staying adaptable, because we're learning all this stuff and then applying it, trying to applying what works and discarding what's bad, right? What's not working. And
Yeah.
speaking of time management, I don't want to keep you. I know you're a busy, busy man, and I could talk to you for hours, bro. Like, for real, like, you are such a wealth of information and a resource for how to live this entrepreneurial journey, like how to live this out from beginning to end. You have such a vision and such a way of explaining it, and your book is absolutely phenomenal, and I can't recommend it enough. I can't wait to read the second book. But my last question for you is,
Well,
what's the
thank you.
future what's yes, thank you, bro. Thank you for being here. This is such an honor and a privilege, for real. What's the future for Fearless Journey? Where are you headed? Like, can you give us a little snippet, a little peek into your vision?
Yeah, well, look, I came up with this company, Fearless Journeys. Really, the title came out of the idea of helping people, be more bold and courageous on their journey, particularly their entrepreneurial journey. A lot of people have a great idea, they have goals, but they don't have, they don't, they get it, they get fear. They have a lot of anxiety. They're not really sure. They're uncertain, right? It brings up a lot of anxiety into the idea of doing something new, different, charting your own course. Um, but they also don't have the people around them. So what I wanted to do is I created a community where you would have people to learn from. So I have had over 50 people who had been on my podcast previously, um, uh, said that they would be featured innovators in the community, and from time to time they come on. So about once a month or so, we have like an online group coaching session where that innovator, instead of just listening to them on a podcast, you're actually in on like a Zoom call with them, and you're having like just learning something that they have some expertise in, and the ability to, one, learn directly from them, ask them questions, but also be able to build a personal connection with them. And so I thought, hey, I have this great network of people. Why not help people come into the community and build a network, and then have like basically mentors, right? Because everybody needs like mentors, um, to do that with, and then also to have a community of other people who are very much in the same mindset of they're trying to learn. And maybe somebody is in the law field, and somebody's in the hospitality field, or somebody's in the food field, culinary field, right? So um, but you've got like different ideas that you can learn from one another, even if you're in totally different things. And also just the strength of being in part of a community and knowing that there are other people kind of going through similar things as you, and you can get a sense of how they navigated their challenges and how you can navigate yours. And just kind of always like reinforcing to people some of these characteristics. Okay, what's the number one? I mean, I always start with like, well, number one thing of every entrepreneur is a problem solver, right? You see,
Mm.
every business is a solution to a problem, right? So, um, uh, people are hungry, so you need to come up with some food for them, right? Well, then how do you? Food is like a very general thing, right? Like, there's millions of restaurants, there's millions of food products, but how do you find your niche within that, right? Maybe you find your Italian food niche, right? And then, how do you get it to them? Maybe they're gonna buy it through e-commerce. Maybe they're gonna buy it at a restaurant. Maybe you're gonna sell business to business. You're gonna sell to restaurants, right? So you just come up with like the solutions to the problems that people have, and hunger is a great one that people everybody has that problem. Yeah, yeah. So, but the fact of the matter is, you have a lot of competition in that field, right? The iPhone doesn't have that much competition, relatively speaking. Um, but it's a really high technology thing that you had to spend years and years of developing and making and iterating and compounding from the previous innovation to the next. So, but yeah. So anyway, but really, Fearless Journeys is a community for people to help them build that entrepreneur mindset with other people. And we do it through some unique ways. Like I said, the online coaching sessions with different innovators. We also do like group meetups in different cities. So I've hosted dinners in Miami and Denver and Atlanta, and just places where I have like a strong network where I can bring people together. But also we've done a lot of group trips. So we were just in Charleston. We've done trips to Nashville. I've done international trips to Guatemala, to Colombia, to Argentina, Uruguay, the Dominican Republic. So we we do these trips so that first of all, it gets people outside the box, like it gets them outside their day to
Mm.
day. Also, I love travel, and I just think it's always good to, it's a great learning experience. And also, when you travel with other people, you get to know them better. You have these bonds, you have these memories you share together. But then when we go to these places, we always meet with local entrepreneurs. So you got to eat dinner, so you might as well have dinner with an entrepreneur and have an intentional discussion around that dinner. We might go to a place of work, like we might go to a factory in Guatemala that we that does like filtered water systems, right? So you kind of learn how they're solving a problem of unclean water in Guatemala. How do they solve that problem for people? We went to a coffee farm in Guatemala. You learn the whole process about coffee's made, how they get it to you, and also the story of the family who actually started the farm, 27 years ago. The father started it. He was coming out of poverty, and it's a very rare story in a place like Guatemala. But anyway, so when you come to the trips, at the very least, you get inspired by the
Mm.
entrepreneurs you're meeting, and you get to know and form bonds with them and the other people on the trip, and you get to travel. It's fun. So I love doing the group trips. So I have a group trip coming up to Chile and Argentina in the end of December and early January. It's going to be a fun trip. It's a 3-part trip, so people can come on either 1 part, 2 parts, or 3 parts. So we're going to do some adventuring as well. Be doing some hiking, which also I think leans into one of the characteristics I outlined in my new book. And one of those characteristics is that entrepreneurs are adventurous. And so we want to inspire people to be more adventurous, because when you're adventurous in, let's say, hiking, or just adventurous in it, it could be artistic adventure, right? Like whatever it is. When you build that adventurous heart, it's going to allow you to be more adventurous in an entrepreneurial realm as well. So these are all things that can kind of translate. But for me, it's also just getting people outside their day to day life, and when you do that, sometimes you just need to leave your environment to start having other thoughts that you can think about. I know your part of your story is you left New York maybe post COVID, and you went to South Carolina thinking it was going to be a few weeks or a few months, and you stayed there for a lot longer. Maybe you got outside and you said, by the way, there's another place I could actually live. I could still be a Yankees fan, but I could do so from South Carolina.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So how's the membership work? Like how do people get involved? Like if and is there a limit? Like do you have a limit like where you're not accepting any more people into the group, or how's that work?
I haven't reached a point where I have a limit, but people can go to the website fearlessjourneys.org. There's a button there to apply for membership. It's a pretty simple application. We do ask you a couple questions there just to see, get you thinking a little bit in a sense. Once we accept you, it's a $500 a year membership. That includes a one-on-one call with me. It includes some group coaching sessions, and then it gives you access to all the invites for dinner meetups and in different cities across the U.S., and also our group trips across the world, where I'm on all those trips. So it's a lot of fun, and so that's what it kind of opens up to you when you join Fearless Journeys.
I love what you're saying about the adventure too. It's like, we have to replenish the creativity well, right? So it's like going out there and experiencing stuff opens up your mind to things that you wouldn't be thinking about if you're stuck behind a computer. You know what I mean? or in other
And you know what? Yeah, that's so much more important now in the post-COVID world because it's so easy to just sit home and get on Zoom calls and you could work from anywhere. As much as I like to put together group trips, I also like solo travel, right?
Mm.
So I might just go. I might just go to. I could go to Colombia for a week, right? And I could from Florida, I can fly down there. It's 3 hours and I can just open up my laptop in a coffee shop in Colombia rather than behind my desk, in South Florida every day. I could, and then you know what you do your work like you would on any other day, and then you close the laptop and you go out and you go for a hike somewhere, or you go, just go experience something new in a new city, or maybe this is why people go to conferences, right? Like, so people fly halfway across the country to go to a conference to meet a bunch of people. But you know what I've found over the years, even in other jobs I had, people I know that they've done business travel their whole life, 30, 40 years of business travel. How many states you been? Oh, I've been to, they might say, oh, I've been to 20 states, but I basically just sat in ballrooms. I flew to Dallas, and I went right to the hotel, and I went to the conference ballroom, and we had the chicken dinner, in the conference ballroom, and then I went to the airport. I didn't see any. I don't really know anything about Dallas. Well, I was like,
Mm.
I always took the opportunity. I still do if I'm going somewhere for business to be like, hey, let's go find a local restaurant. Oh, do I have local friends here in the city that maybe either I could stay with or they can show me around for a day? Or you know what? Hey, my company is flying for me to go out there for 3 nights for a conference, but I'm going to stay a fourth night on my own expense. They're still paying for the flight both ways, but I can at least, hey, let me explore. Oh, let's go to this history museum, or let's go to this park, or let's go kayaking, or like, whatever. Like, you know, you use that time to be able to see and explore. But I think we have so much more opportunity these days to do that. So you going back to the technology question earlier, if you just like, hey, it's better I don't have to commute to an office and spend 30 minutes each way in traffic. Great. But if I'm just going to sit behind a desk and never see people in real life, that's horrible. Like,
Right.
what? I mean, there's just no, I one of our group trips we did a couple years ago was I think it was in the fall of 2022, and we went to Nashville for 4 nights. And one of the days we actually, again, this is just building on my connection. So these are some things. Sometimes people, if they just go to Nashville, they're never going to have this opportunity because they don't have the connection that I had. And that was, we went to Dave Ramsey's headquarters. Now, if Dave Ramsey was there that day, I think we would have met him, but he was actually across the country on vacation. I couldn't time it with my trip, but we met his daughter, and we met one of the. So she was co-hosting his show with another co-host. So we actually got to meet the co-hosts of the Dave Ramsey show that day. But the bigger thing is we got to walk around, and he has 2 huge office buildings, like hundreds and hundreds of people that work there. But the reason I bring this story up is not just to tell you about that connection we had to Dave Ramsey's office, but also to tell you that one of the young people in our community, he was one of the youngest people in the community at the time. Maybe he was 23, 24 years old. He was about 2 years out of college. He was working in Memphis for another organization, very large corporation. I won't say who, but you can kind of guess. Um, and we walked through Dave Ramsey's office in the fall of 2022. And the one thing he said about halfway through our tour was, he said, I've never seen so many people in an office building. Why did he say that? Because he was completing college during COVID. So
Mm.
his first 2 years out of college, his work was 100% remote. He was
Remote.
never in an office. And anytime he had to go into an office, it was never that many people there at one time, because half the people are working from home every day, and then they have and so it was like, and it was weird for me, who's somebody 20 plus years older than him, to see somebody say that. I was like, what are you talking about? Okay, yeah,
Right.
I've been working remote for a number of years myself, but I mean, I had lots of years of working in offices and seeing full on offices. And what's crazy is Dave Ramsey, believe it or not, the first 2 weeks that COVID, everything got shut down for COVID in March of 2020, his office shut down like everybody else. When they told us 15 days to slow the spread, he said,
Mm.
okay, full time. That if you don't want to be here full time, you don't have to work here. I'm not telling you have to work here, but if you want to work here, you got to be here full time. So they never stopped. And
Wow.
so they kept that culture of hundreds of people in the same building at the same time, and they never had any major issues. So, and they have a lot of young people that work there, to be quite honest with you. They have a lot of young, energetic 20, 30 year olds that work there. But anyway, this is a great example of the social skills that are being lost by young people by not being able to interact in real life with people. And I have to tell people, these phones, these are not real life. Half the stuff on here is fake, you know?
Right. Yeah. Man, this has been such a fascinating conversation. I've got so many ideas now. You've definitely inspired me. So, and I know I'm not alone because the listeners are going to be inspired as well. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day and joining me here. I'm going to be looking to you for all kinds of advice. So expect some text messages
All
because,
right. Well, thank you, Joe, or Chef Giuseppe over here. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was awesome and great to connect with you. And this was another great example of getting out there because you and I both went to this event, a social
Mhm.
event. 200 people were there. We met. We connected. Thank you for getting the book and reading it and having me on. And then we continued the connection here. So I think life is all about building more connections. It's a lot of ways if you're looking to move successfully through careers, it's a lot of it is who you know and everything like that too. So I really appreciate that we've gotten to be able to get to know each other here and look forward to future conversations.
Absolutely, man. We'll definitely be touching base, man. You have amazing advice and amazing experience to share, very valuable to anybody listening. So thank you again. God bless you, bro.
Thank you. God bless you as well.
All right, take care.
You too.